Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 37th audio file in the audiocast series known as the Q News Patriot. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SGAnon. Well, folks, it has been an interesting last 7 to 10 days, has it not? It was a pleasure to meet and connect with many of you out there in the community at Reawaken America. It has been a pleasure to learn so much about each of you out there, about the things that are important to you, about the things that drive you in your awakening journey, your walk in this war with me and with all of your brothers and sisters beside you. We're in a time in human history that is accelerating towards the finish line. We are closing the chapter on an era of tremendous evil in this world. And 2023, just within the first 26 days, 25 days, 26 now, has proven to be absolutely incredible. I'll try not to keep you all very long. We have a fair amount to discuss. Things are very dynamic and active in my life at this time, and between my work and supporting my wife. And I very much appreciate all of the support for the recent loss in our family. Sort of goes to highlight that we're all in this together. We all experience many of the same things, and that includes the suffering, the injustice, the wrongness. Without divulging very much information, I will say that the gentleman we lost in our family was about 25 years too early as it pertains to the average life expectancies that are published. And of course, we know those are skewed as well, but this was a complete quarter century in excess of those skewed numbers. And so, it is worth highlighting that as I've been busy and our family has been experiencing many of the same things out there that most of you have dealt with in one way or another or are dealing with. It's sort of easy to get muddied down, and we have to keep ourselves from getting muddied down. I apologize for the delay here with the file. I had intended to get to it at the very last part of this previous weekend. Things just did not pan out in that way. Each of us is following our own spiritual journey, and we're being given the obstacles and the lessons and the guidance, if you will, to better ourselves, to reclaim our world, to understand what it means to have total control and total dominion, if I can use the word, over our communities, our educational institutions, our governmental institutions, and our way of life. So I thank you all for sticking with me for a while over these last few days and being very patient. We have much to discuss, and we're going to get right to it. So recently we saw that the Davos World Economic Forum sort of put themselves on display for all of humanity to see in a very concrete, absolute sort of fashion, calling for anything from, climate-related arrests and terrorism to total control of the food supply chains, the vaccine and medical agenda, the financial agendas all through the world, et cetera, et cetera. None of these topics are necessarily new to many of us, but they're new to a lot of the mass population that is coming around to appreciate the gravity of the connections for the first time. Interestingly and curiously enough, three of the most pivotal individuals involved in the United States presidential election theft and the launch and development of the COVID-19 bioweapon kill shots and the bioweapon itself, the viruses, the bioweapon itself, were absent from the forum. Those individuals were William Henry Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, and Mr. George Soros. Fascinatingly, Mr. Schwab is the founder of the World Economic Forum itself and is a member of the Rothschild family by association and marriage, or excuse me, by lineage. The fact that he was not there is a very good sign It shows us that the White Hat Alliance is making significant progress as it pertains to the criminals and traitors, the transnational mafiosos at the very, very top of the food chain that have been pulling the levers of different governments all through the world through their control of financial apparatuses, business and finance, and corporations. Curiously, Mr. Bill Gates, also absent, a pivotal individual involved with the World Health Organization, the rollout of vaccinations, sort of the point man for virus solution. Remember, this is the same person that designed an operating system, then designed a virus and security breaches to inlay into that operating system, and then designed and sold the cure for the problem that he had just created. That is precisely what they have attempted to do with humanity, and in many areas, unfortunately, are still attempting to do. Mr. George Soros is an interesting case. Mr. George Soros is an economic terrorist, a Hungarian-born Nazi sympathizer, a cabal family member, or a Kabbalist family member, and is directly responsible for the economic terrorism and collapse of the Soviet Union economy in the late 1980s and early 1990s. It was at that time that the Russian economy was looted by the Western bankers, including and being spearheaded by Mr. George Soros, to a tremendous degree, and great suffering, depression, economic depression, and death was caused within Russia as a result of that process. The Russians are very, very well aware of what this cabal is capable of doing to a developed nation. Russia has never been a third world nation, despite all of the educational propaganda we've been given here in the United States and in other Western countries around the world. Russia is an advanced, technologically proficient society. They have excellent medicine, excellent science and research, and one of the most powerful militaries in the world. They are enormous in their resource capability, and they have access to vast swaths of natural resources and land from which to draw anything that they need. It's worth keeping in mind that Mr. Soros represented a wanted terrorist on behalf of the Russian Federation, and his change in schedule as it pertained to the World Economic Forum was much more than a change in schedule. Based on some of my research and a very brief discussion with the gentleman I refer to as my mentor, I believe it is exceedingly possible, in the probable space. I wish that I could say absolutely, definitively, etc., but I sort of try to stray away from some of those absolutist terms. But it's my belief that Mr. Soros has been redetained and taken into custody, and that the missing of the World Economic Forum dealt directly with his custody as it related to the Russian authorities. It's about as much as I'm aware of on the issue at this time, but a sudden change in schedule would certainly be an excellent and sort of not well thought out excuse to deflect from something along those lines. There's absolutely no reason that any of the individuals we've discussed so far should have missed this year's event. This tells us and confirms to us that at some levels and many levels, we have very powerful control of this cabal. We know in other levels and in other areas, we are still working through threats, assets, espionage, agents and combatants, etc. Essentially, the Five Eyes military apparatus, the mercenary military apparatus that is sort of sprawled out all throughout our world. But at this time, it is my understanding that one of those three gentlemen have been given a new, or have been transitioned, I should say, to the next part to play in this process. It's interesting that the World Economic Forum published immediately before it began that cyber attacks and cyber pandemics were a very real threat in the world. We have seen no less than 10 separate instances of major infrastructural cyber attacks happening across all areas of society in several different developed nations and undeveloped nations, shutting down everything from power grids to healthcare systems to government offices and access control systems, including banking systems, at least in some areas. I believe that we are being softly led into that. It is also my belief that the White Hat Alliance at this time is using this portion of the deep state agenda as the various assets that remain continue to deploy these techniques and these attacks against we the people and society at large. They're being used as cover for the White Hat Alliance to also go in, sort of allowing the deep state to open the door and acquire information, knowledge, etc., data that is necessary for formulating the next stages of operations going forward. It's important to highlight that as we go through war, it is a dynamic situation that is always in flux. There is never a moment in an armed or irregular conflict where reconnaissance and general intelligence gathering is not happening. It's actually one of the main lifelines and one of the most important aspects of successfully bringing down an enemy. As we go through portions of this deep state agenda, we have gained unbelievable amounts of knowledge to support knowledge that military intelligence all around the world has had for a long time. What's more is we're bringing that knowledge to the forefront in the narrative space through coordinated communications operations that seem to be happening, at least in some levels, at the behest of military command and control. Understanding then that part of this is being used for good and part of this is being used continually for evil allows us to step back and appreciate the battle that's really happening. A battle for the minds and souls and hearts of humanity, a battle for our belief systems and our spiritual understandings, a battle for what we know to be possible and what we know to not be possible. This is a remarkable time to be alive as we watch this death of the deep state system at the same time that we are seeing the actual physical takedown of this system to the rest of the world. Recently, I had discussed trafficking operations that were being destroyed in the South American continent and the Caribbean basin. We now have some verifiable, yet circumstantial, evidence that seems to point to the same. The United States Coast Guard, currently functioning as a member of the Department of the Navy during wartime, has been intercepting Haitian migrant vehicles, boats, headed to the Bahamas. The recent intercept, which I published on TruthSocial, is one of only several. This intercept occurred within 72 hours of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis activating the Florida National Guard optically. It is important to highlight that all 50 states' National Guards have been active since May of 2020. But now we're seeing introductions into the public space for reasoning to bring those National Guard forces to bear. We're bringing the sleepers around slowly to not only accept but also approve of the way we are handling things at a militaristic level. Military justice is a scary thing for a lot of people out there because of the level of brainwashing that's been deployed against our societies. All through history, we are told examples of armies conquering armies, coups happening where legitimate governments were overthrown. And we've never been told that the individuals, fomenting all of those conflicts are the same individuals at the very top controlling both armies or both nation states. As such, we have a unique skewed lens as a population of we the people around the world of what is appropriate use of military force and what is inappropriate use. We are breaking that mold that narrative of control now, and it's one of the deepest molds that we have to break. It sort of ties into the slow death, the slow burn of patriotism, the humiliation and degradation of our national identity and ideologies, both in the United States and around the world, for going on 50 to 75 years. It exists at the epicenter of very conflicted feelings for many people all around the world who would be patriots if they had been given the proper information from the time that they were in school until the time that they're currently living now. We're breaking decades of methods of thought. We're breaking decades of belief systems and habits that are confined and cannot serve us as we go through this process and go forward. Military justice is the only way. We have transnational criminals organizations at the very top of society that have waged nothing less than total bioterroristic and nuclear terroristic war against we the peoples of the earth for hundreds of years. We cannot allow our societies as we go through this process to not appreciate the gravity of the changes that have to happen. And in order to prepare such appreciation, we must bring the control and fear matrix, the hypnosis trance, the dream spell that exists over all of us, or many of us. We must bring it utterly to its knees. We must get people to see outside of their current belief systems. We must get people to expand their knowledge, to expand their ideas of what are possible, and to accept solutions that they were previously against. This process is very effective at doing that. And all the while, we have the heroes, the men and women in uniform, the patriots and double agents in plants, in government, and key positions all around the world who are actively participating in a coordinated, cross-dimensional effort to drive the levers of physical change as the digital army drives the levers of awakening and narrative and awareness change. What an incredible and ingenious plan. Not without its sufferings, not without its losses, certainly not without its casualties. But it provides us an outlet to prevent this from ever happening again. It provides us a way to grow spiritually rapidly in the fashion necessary to compel us into the next age. It is a very literal trial by fire, and I believe the forces at play are even higher than those white hat alliances, or that white hat alliance that we all sort of colloquially know. Evidence of what is going on around the world is all around us. Just yesterday, we had documents filed in the Sam Bankman-Fried case discussing the creditors list of the FTX organization and all of its affiliated entities. The list appears to have been filed under seal, but FINMA and FinNews obtained information discussing Swiss banks, JP Morgan, and others as creditors to that organization, as well as various U.S. government agencies and officials, corporate agencies and officials, and banking agencies and officials all around the world, to include HSBC, Deutsche Bank, and others. The FTX scandal represents a major choke point in the transition from the surface level light money system, if you will, to the black market dark money, a port of call, if you will, to ferry one across. We have destroyed that port, and now we are attempting to ascertain where all of the webs led. Military intelligence has it all, but we have to change some areas of society without direct military force, or the consciousness of humanity will not transfer into the new age and a new understanding of what is possible in life. We cannot progress things in a way that is unbelievable. If we do so, then we're sort of forcing individuals back into a blind acceptance. We have to allow an awakening process that is organic. It must be meaningful for all individuals in all areas of society. It must affect the things that are the most important to each of us. It is truly a good versus evil conflict. Those documents in the Sam Bankman-Fried case are scheduled for a hearing on February the 8th of 2023. I imagine good digging out there will give us more information prior to that hearing. And at the time when those documents are unsealed, if they are unsealed after the hearing, I believe that we're going to see a very intense and very vast picture of where things tie together. Of particular note is the fact that dark money at the Swiss bank level, in other words, the banking apparatuses that tied directly to the Vatican, the CIA, and the Five Eyes agencies, are involved on paper in the Sam Bankman-Fried trial. Where we go from here as it pertains to this case is going to be very interesting. Additionally, based on the research I'm seeing and doing, we're going to see several Epstein-style islands, except much worse, coming into the narrative space over the next 6 to 9 months. Be they presented in a lens of sudden discovery, be they presented in a lens of unsealed court documents, or however, we know that humanity cannot progress forward until we have an understanding of what was done at the most evil levels and what sort of evil would bind all of this corruption together. A major resistance point for all of the sleepers and the normies is that such corruption across all sectors of society in all areas of the world is simply not possible. It cannot be controlled because there are too many individuals involved. But when they understand and come to realize that the reason it was able to be controlled was because of the level of evil and depravity and blackmail that these individuals were participating in and certainly had on themselves and others, it becomes very easy to understand the leap of faith, the small leap of faith needed to see the spider web for what it is. It is the children, the human trafficking, the deaths of our little ones, our women and our children and men that are trafficked against their will. It is this issue that will more than any bind humanity together. It is this issue that the deep state seeks to protect at all costs. It is this understanding that the deep state censors the hardest. Why? Because it is the most dangerous to their narrative control. Their narrative control is primarily lost. It's only a matter of time now as the awakening progresses. Can you imagine how quickly it will progress if 2 or 3 or 5 other Epstein-style islands with various names of celebrities, politicians, well-known athletes, bankers, respected community individuals begins to come out? It will be rapid and it will be final. We may differ on political ideology and belief. We may differ on the nature of the earth. We may differ on many issues. But this issue is by far the most unifying because it offends the most basic of sensibilities to the human being and the most basic of innocence to God. It is this issue that we are taking out first and foremost, and operations are continuing, again, beneath 3 to 5 different continents to do exactly that. We may see some activity soon in the Pacific Theater of Operations. Flight radar, very active recently, showing a number of coalition military aircraft in and out of Australia, New Zealand, the United States, and Central America. A number of them, if you track by call sign, go dark at different points along their flight paths. Many of them do not return to the radar. I believe, based on my research, that we've had United States National Guard in the last 15 days in no less than 5 different countries in the Eastern Pacific, or I guess the far Western Pacific from the vantage point of where the United States is located. in that Indonesia, Australia, Philippine area. There is so much happening. It's becoming difficult to keep up. The coming Russia offensive will involve Belarus and Hungary and will be one of the main drivers for Turkey leaving NATO. Turkey plays a pivotal part in helping to restore balance and destroy terror cells in the Middle East. Ancestral writings of wrongs are also occurring in these areas of the world. China is actually currently involved in Ukraine with Russia and has been sending manpower, technology, various equipment, and munitions through Russia and over into the Western areas. At the same time this is occurring, the Russian and Chinese navies are continuing submarine hunting along the eastern borders of Asia, the Korean Peninsula, the eastern areas of the Russian nation, as well as, of course, down in Chinese waters. As we go through the end stages of this process, we're seeing a number of these mercenary military capabilities from deep hidden bases and sort of hideaway areas all around the world being called up to action because they are actually needed. The military alliance is slowly but surely eradicating the ability of this deep state at a kinetic level to cause mass casualties and harm. At one point, let's highlight for some perspective, and we'll come back to Russia. At one point, the Barack Obama administration had authorized and procured for FEMA 30,000 guillotines. Those guillotines were being stored away for the times that we're currently living. They were initially planned to be deployed against we the people and those individuals who took up arms in resistance to what was going to become the last and final and total grab for power, control, and enslavement here in the world. Why? Well, we know why. There were many horrible things in store for us from a 2016 loss with Hillary Clinton potentially, hypothetically, having gotten into office. By this stage in our lives, only 7 years beyond from that point, 6.5 years, more than 4.5 billion people would be dead. The world would be engulfed in nuclear conflict. Very lethal plagues and pandemics would be raging all around the world. And the individuals responsible would be safely underground, awaiting our annihilation. Instead, we have gone forth and met them where they're at. We have begun and are continuing, and we have been very successful to take back our world, destroy their evil, and eradicate them. Russia is about to ramp that process up considerably in Ukraine. Russian missiles have been striking key critical infrastructure again in eastern Ukraine, and Russian military intelligence is currently tracking all weapon shipments into that area of the world. It is worth noting that the Belarusian Air Force has been joint training and coordinated operations with the Russian Air Force and learning to use advanced munitions and weapon systems in preparation or expectation to be a party in this conflict. If you're in Ukraine still at this time, my prayers are with you, and I encourage you in any way possible to leave the country immediately. It is my understanding that the Nazi Ukrainian government has been imprisoning or killing its own citizens for desertion, avoidance of duty, including very old men and very young children. This is the same playbook that was used in the last days of World War II Germany, when the SS, the paramilitary forces of the cabal, had gained total control over the German society and were executing individuals publicly in their communities for failing to stand up and fight for their nation in what was an unwinnable, unjustifiable, and indefensible conflict. We're seeing that playbook deployed now. My prayers go out to all of the individuals caught in Eastern Europe between these mighty forces, we the peoples who simply wish to live our lives and be left alone. We will see a bright future from this. We will see a reshaped, multipolar world with fair trade, no war, and a desire to serve the public good. But to do so, we must completely destroy the capability of a very ancient evil from reemerging ever again. And the complete occupation, re-education, and in some cases reincorporation of the territory of Ukraine is necessary to achieve that end. NATO and the US are already involved in the conflict and have been for a number of weeks. Russian military intelligence knows this. In particular, US self-propelled guns, artillery, British man-made UAVs, armored vehicles, AVs, and the like, troop transports, etc., are being targeted and taken out. That process will intensify as NATO and the US continue to wage what amounts to a proxy war, but a war nonetheless, against the correction of history and the restoration of power. Just today, or just yesterday, the Secretary for the Security Council of the Russian Federation named the US and NATO countries as parties to the conflict. This likely as a prelude for justification for Russian military intervention on an expanded level. It is worth noting that at the same time all of these operations are happening, the largest joint operation between the Israeli Defense Force and US military assets is currently ongoing in the Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean. The training operation, known as Juniper Oak. See if I can find my research very quickly on it. The Juniper Oak exercise involves strategic bombers, fighter aircraft, combat search and rescue aircraft, electronic airborne warfare systems, refuelers, naval forces with a focus on suppression of enemy air defense, long-range precision strikes at a ground level with a mission of strike coordination, long-range precision fire drills from the air with a focus on air interdiction. Symbolically, we're being shown by the White Hat Alliance the death of this cabal. And interestingly enough, the main U.S. carrier involved in this exercise is the USS George H.W. Bush. It is one of the many ships taking part in the Juniper Oak 2023 exercise. There will be a live fire exercise that will take place both in Israel and the Mediterranean Sea. Now, I got curious about Juniper Oaks simply because the names of these operations over the last couple of years have been nothing short of glaringly symbolic and very historically relevant to sort of righting the wrongs of the spell work that has been weaved throughout our world by this cabal's assault on our spiritual and energetic makeup and the world in which we live. Juniper trees have the capacity to self-prune, shedding branches for survival, and the sap within is rot resistant. Juniper berries and sap have been used medicinally in Chinese and Native American cultures, and the berries supply food and shelter for those who consume them. Based on that, along with some other research that I've done, it appears that what is going on with this enormous exercise is a prelude, is a sting op sort of prelude that's going to get much bigger and be called into action in a much more unexpected way than what we're seeing currently. Mossad assets are under assault all through the world. South American-based deep state intelligence and Five Eyes mercenaries and espionage combatants activated, many of them being destroyed or forced into submission by the militaries in those areas. Heads of the cartels, the true individuals that control vast amounts of weapons trafficking, money funneling, and drugs, are being destroyed or captured by a large military operation that is occurring both in South America and in Central America at this time. Additionally, Turkey has been involved in combat exercises in northern Syria, and those will only intensify. We're seeing the pincers close on this cabal's ability to wage war and control and direct its own ends. When you've taken out the enemy's general, as we did in 2016 and 17, we work our way down the command structure until we have dealt with every single and every last enemy asset. That process takes a great deal of time, but cannot be accelerated in a reckless or chaotic fashion. These individuals, many of them experts at irregular warfare, guerrilla tactics, blending and hiding and disappearing. They are truly cockroaches. We cannot allow the cockroaches to find even the smallest crevice to crawl back into and continue their dark practices. As we see various military exercises around the world being presented as trainings, we understand that some of them may be trainings, but many of them, as the one I just described, are more likely covers for serious special operations that are to occur or are occurring. I think we can expect to see more news out of the Middle East over the coming weeks as a result of this enormous joint training exercise. You know, this entire journey for me over the years has been about piecing together how the world works. It's been about seeking a greater understanding of who and how the levers of power and who's in power, how they're controlled, how decisions are made, how business, finance, law, and the military can all come together. How various governmental, non-governmental, charitable, and special agencies and organizations are weaved into the matrix of control through the funnels, often monetary funnels, that are created to leverage such control. We are writing all of that. We are attacking all areas of society and taking them back. Recently, we had confirmation from the White Hat Alliance that we had control of the spiritual obfuscation apparatus that this cabal has used all through the ages on us. At the very top, our doctrine will return to a truer and more pursuant state with the will of love, the will, and the word of God. And I think we're going to see education in that area specifically that will help provide us context, confidence, and hope as we go forward. This is an incredible time to be alive. We are experiencing, in a very rapid fashion, the complete disintegration of the deep state's ability to control. And while painful, upsetting, and certainly not without its losses, I, for one, will never leave this fight to my child. I will go until there is breath, until there is no breath left in my lungs. I will not, I cannot unsee the things I have seen and unlearn the things that I've learned. And I will not stand by and hope that that system changes. A great point of my message is to focus on our spiritual understanding and come into our own power. But is it not true that coming into our own power, if we are doing so in alignment with that spiritual sustainment, the source of God of all, is it not necessary to move into action as well? I serve on the policy council for a local organization that governs, to some extent, my son's schooling. It's not a tremendous role, but it is an elected one. It doesn't have any special sway in the community, but it has a very real and very direct impact on the human being that's most important to me. I encourage all of you to feel out what your calling is at this stage in the battle and keep your head in the game. You may work a day job like I do and may not be able to pursue certain paths without serious compromise on lifestyle that you may not feel called to do, but others might. Allow your spirit to meet the Spirit of God where it's at. You have access to this compass. You have access to a guidance system that will help point you in the direction of what is fulfilling and meaningful for you. You came into this world with a purpose, and a great deal of our purposes out there are being brought to bear and highlighted and shown to us at this stage in history. I was asked recently, what can people do? Of course, the message is always to continue to share the awareness and continue to awaken others and connect them with the truth. But on a personal and visceral note, the things that add satisfaction and meaning to your life are the things that you should pursue. And satisfaction and meaning, peace, if you will, it is worth highlighting that those traits and qualities are far different than pleasure. Pleasure is fleeting. Pleasure is subject to circumstances and can very easily lead to temptation. But the peace that surpasses understanding, the rush of passion and satisfied energy, the basking in the glow of the Spirit of God when you have found something truly fulfilling, that is different. And I dare say it might be the most delicious of feelings that the human being can experience. Follow your passion. Allow your connection to the Creator of all things to lead you in the direction that you need to go. This ride is going to get very bumpy. We have much to look for, and we have much to be hopeful for, but we must be shrewd, and we must understand that there is a process that this all must take. We are witnessing their annihilation on full display. Those that are left will capitulate or die. But on their way out, they will create chaos, and they will deploy all attempts to cause suffering, confusion, and destruction and division amongst the Patriots. But if we are following the Spirit of all, the God of all things, the Almighty, there is simply nothing they can do that will protect their lineage, their posterity, and their future any longer. at the same time, it will allow us that little bit of peace, that margin of calm in the storm that reminds us to keep our heads cool and keep our eyes sharp, even though we're under fire. The clearest heads prevail on the battlefield every time. Clarity is accessible to us at any moment, but we must apply effort and faith, and we must engage our spiritual body and being actively. We must use our minds, concentrate, practice our focus on listening for that inner voice. And when I say listen, I don't mean with your ears. It's not an auditory sensation. It's a wave of momentum and energy in the body, a sudden rush of ease, a glow, a wonderful, satisfying, incredible feeling that goes deeper and transcends layers far more than emotions. That is the voice. That is the touch of God. So as I leave you this evening, I leave you with great hope and encouragement. We are winning in ways that they never thought possible because they never believed they would lose. We are winning in areas of society that they believed they would always have control of and have had control of for many, many, many decades. Be of good cheer. The battle is not without its difficulties, but the war is being won. Your expertise, your individual skill sets, the gifts and talents and callings that each of you had placed into your being by the Creator of all things are being awakened, sharpened, and refined now, so that after we have dealt with this war, we will be able to rebuild the earth in the image that it was always meant to be. We are being trained for the regency. We are the rulers of this world, children of the living God, and we must act like it. And from this point forward, let no man despair. This war is won. But the finishing processes, the completion, the absolution, that takes a little bit of time. Be not afraid. I hope to be with each of you again soon. And I hope you have an incredible, blessed, and fulfilling evening. Hug your family. Kiss your sleeper. Tell them it doesn't matter whether they believe you or not. In time, all things are revealed. And in time, all truth will be made known. God bless each of you this evening. I'll be back with you again soon. This is SGAnon. Thanks. Bye-bye.